Okay, I think we are ready to begin. Appreciate everyone being here to kick off the Yale Innovation Summit. I want to start by just thanking President McInnes, Josh Jabal, and everybody at Yale who puts this on. This is one of our largest gatherings of the year in Connecticut. We're starting it at 9 a.m., so I appreciate all of you being here early. I will note there's plenty of room down in the front if you guys want to come down. And I want to start with a story. So first, I'm Dan O'Keefe. I serve humbly as Commissioner of Economic Development in Connecticut, also the state's Chief Innovation Officer. And when I arrived this morning, I was waiting for an autonomous car. The autonomous car never showed up. In that moment, my assistant happened to walk up. Not only did she show me where I need to go to get the autonomous car, she brought me a Diet Coke, which is my unfortunate morning addiction. So I just want to point out that having a human in the loop still matters. It's not just about autonomous and AI. Sometimes you need the human to show up and solve problems. But I'm excited for this topic today. It's something that's very near and dear to my heart. My background is in technology investing. Very excited about what we're seeing develop throughout the world and certainly in the state of Connecticut. And I'm joined by some of our most iconic companies. So I'm going to just kick it off. If you guys wouldn't mind just going down the row and just introduce yourself.
Sure. Good morning. I'm Gary Cooper. I'm the Director of Electrical Engineering and Design at Electric Boat. And I'm also one of my roles is to guide and lead the implementation of AI at the company.
What does Electric Boat do?
Electric Boat designs and builds nuclear submarines.
Thank you.
Morning. I'm Pete Bradley from RTX Pratt & Whitney, which makes jet engines, and I am the Principal Fellow for Digital at Pratt & Whitney, so I have things like technical leadership of AI, high-performance computing, which people know as supercomputing, and a lot of other things that kind of fit into that.
Frank Flaherty. I'm a Vice President Chief Engineer at Lockheed Martin for Mission Integrated Command and Control. On our part of Lockheed Martin, I mean, we do satellites, we do aeronautics, we do undersea mission systems. But in my part, we do the integrated command and control of integrated air and missile defense systems, undersea mission systems, and a lot more beyond that. So a business that's transforming from AI for sure.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ian Boyer. I'm just the insurance guy. I work for a company called YRisk, which is a subsidiary of The Hartford. And our company's role is to underwrite the businesses of the future. So we're the innovation brand of The Hartford.
Awesome. Thank you. And hopefully you guys see the theme here. We wanted to get a group of people that are much, much smarter than me to talk about these kind of emergent trends and kind of what it means for our companies and our economy. So let me kick it off with Gary. If you could talk a little bit about where you see the intersection between AI and autonomous. Where does the compute power of AI and the autonomy of autonomous, where is their overlap? Where are their differences?
Yeah, that's that's a great topic. Our vision and my vision and our vision as a company, I think, is that we're not going to be in the business of designing and building autonomous vehicles. Right, we are always going to have humans in the loop, but I see great opportunity for an intersection between autonomy and AI and how we build and inspect and check quality for our products. Right, so I envision us having robots, for example, that do welding in locations where it's very difficult for humans to get, and then I envision those robots also having the capability or other robots to go in and inspect those welds and make some autonomous decisions about what's the most efficient way to go do this inspection and to use AI to interpret what they're seeing and sensing and determine whether a weld is acceptable or not. I also see opportunities for us to use autonomous robots to essentially wander the shipyard and look for safety problems and quality problems before they become injuries to human beings. So that's sort of the intersection I see, and AI is going to be the driving force behind those autonomous systems' ability to make a decision based on the information available to them.
Other folks, how do you see where's the overlap? Where are the differences? How does it sort of define how you think about it as a company?
I'll jump in. So one of the areas that I think we spend a lot of time on the compute side is, we get a lot of information from sensors all over, right? And those sensors provide way too much for a human to be able to make a decision on. And the AI that we're putting both in, I'd say, large-scale data centers to compute what's really happening at a high degree, but also where we need edge nodes of information that's really at the tip of the spear. Those things have to be able to come together, but at the end of the day, the autonomy is used to help in decision making, right? To help inform an operator that's otherwise completely overwhelmed by sensor information to make a decision faster, to see if a fault is going to happen, to make sure that the right information is presented at the right time as well. When you're in those scenarios, there's just too much at one given moment, and we're in a world where data is everywhere. It's even more prevalent with the more sensors we put out there. So that degree is really necessary to help them be more effective.
Let me ask a question on that, because one of the things that we're seeing in the data in Connecticut is we're seeing GDP grow faster than jobs. And actually, it's particularly acute in the manufacturing sector. So I think it's mostly robotics and automation, less so AI, although perhaps AI is playing a role. With what you just described, humans perhaps not being able to interpret that volume of data, do you view these tools as replacing humans, or do you view these tools as augmenting the work of humans?
I view them as augmenting. I don't see them as replacing a human. There's still, at least in a lot of what we're doing, there's still a lot of human interaction involved, right? There might be some simpler decisions that may not be necessary for a human to make anymore, that have high probability and low safety concerns, but there's a lot more that definitely require a human to be involved. But they can still work a lot more effectively and efficiently through that kind of rapid processing.
Right. Ian, jump in here, just because you mentioned just the insurance guy, but it's obviously clearly one of our most iconic industries, particularly around the city of Hartford, and over 100 years of understanding these emergent trends and being able to underwrite them. So based on what was just described, how do you think about these emergent trends towards autonomous, towards AI-driven decision making, and how do you think about it from an underwriting perspective?
Yeah, well, we just talked a little bit about there's just an enormous amount of data that is out there, and human beings have to make decisions on that data. And so if our goal is to deliver products with speed, ease, accuracy to increase productivity, this compute power, which is going to help augment human beings to make decisions, we can make better decisions faster, more accurate. And what's fascinating to us in the insurance business is this is pervasive. People think that artificial intelligence and autonomous only affects certain businesses. It will be everywhere, from the small business customer all the way up to the largest industries and companies. And we have to be prepared to evaluate what risks that creates for the companies themselves, and how that creates opportunities to grow the economy and enhance productivity, and perhaps most importantly, safety, because an injured worker is less productive than the healthy worker. So for us, it's about augmenting the human's ability to make decisions so we can all kind of just do this better.
Yeah, got it. Please.
Yeah, and I'd just like to add, one of the things that we're seeing is that this is really a driver for innovation. We have to constantly compete both in the marketplace and on the battlefield, and that's a constant challenge. What we're seeing is companies like ours, which are sitting on years and years of experience and data, can now interpret that in new ways and innovate much faster. And so what you're seeing is where before AI could kind of make decisions, and now it can take actions. And so we actually have systems where an engineer is interacting with AI agents that will go out and search thousands of scholarly documents and then run simulations to understand and advance new capabilities. And that's going to be really powerful, I think. It's something that's fundamental to our ability to compete as we go forward.
Yeah, and if I can add just one thing to that, what you just described, this incredible knowledge base. So if you take the data that's being produced and scholarly articles, historical experience, it can help us be better in the future, but it can also help us bridge that gap as younger people. How do you teach younger people things? How do you capture that knowledge that's sitting in an engineer's brain?
Yeah.
And deliver it to the next generation or to your customers?
Yeah, this is one of the things that I think is really interesting. I think there's a lot of fear about, will this replace, younger employees and things like that. And we do have to think about that. How do we train the next generation? But I'll just tell you a little experience from last week. We had a really complex supercomputing problem to deal with. And I basically got into, I had kind of an inkling from 20 years ago in experience, and I started discussing it with a frontier model. And within an hour, we'd kind of figured it out. We'd written some code to solve the problem. And there were places where I actually challenged it and said, I'm not sure that's quite right. And it said, no, really, this is okay because. And I came out of that with all the knowledge that I would have had over the 2 days that it would have taken me to solve before. So I learned faster, we solved it faster, we innovated faster. We didn't take the person out of the loop, but we just were able to do something so much more quickly. And that, I think, is really exciting.
Yeah, I would add to that. I don't view this as terribly different from all the other industrial innovations that have happened over the last 150 years. The assembly line, the computer, right? The computer allowed us to create all this extra data. There were people that thought when personal computers came out, there's not going to be any jobs anymore because computers are going to do everything. Really what they resulted in is people being able to do a lot more. And I really see AI heading us down that same path if we manage it right.
Yeah, the way I've described it is, I think there will be an economic dislocation because every time we've seen one of these waves of innovation, going all the way back to the steam engine, the printing press, there is a dislocation, but as humans understand the innovation and understand how to leverage it to be more productive, to do exactly what you just described. But I will tell you, for talking about how do we educate the next generation, and we could do a whole panel on that topic, and I'm not going to hijack it, I promise. But, for my daughters, I've got a 14 and a 17-year-old. For them, AI is cheating. And I'm okay with my younger daughter. She's in 8th grade. You got to learn your voice, judgment, empathy, all of that stuff. But for my older daughter, who's applying to colleges, I called their head of school and read them the Riot Act. Because I'm like, she's going to graduate from high school and not understand how to leverage these tools, not for cheating. I'm not asking to leverage it to replace the work she needs to learn how to do, but to learn how to do it faster, more iteratively, fail faster. That's what I think AI ultimately enables.
I'm on a couple of university advisory boards for industry, and that's what I've been trying to encourage universities to do is teach their students how to use AI effectively and how to think critically, analyze the answers AI is giving them to make sure they're getting the right answers, and then how to use it to make decisions, right? It's not gonna, we got to be careful that it doesn't replace their basic learning about the fundamentals of physics.
100%.
They need to learn how to use it correctly, and the universities need to help them with that, not like fight against it.
Yeah, Gary, I was also at a recent industry advisory board, and I was overwhelmingly pleased to hear, they asked us, hey, what are we seeing from, graduating students coming in? Are we teaching them the right things when it comes to AI? And they were surveilling the students and asking the questions about, are they ready to use it? And they were, just like we teach engineers, they were challenging the outcome, right? And that was nice to hear. It's not about cheating. It's about using it as a tool to help provide information, challenge the outcome. Is this the right thing? Which is what we want all of our engineers doing all the time when we build stuff.
Yeah. I'll give one final example. If you go back to how most of us in the room learned math, like a lot of it was memorization, right? And then over time, they invented what they now call the new math. And when my daughter would come to me and ask me to help her solve her problems, I'd be like, here you go. And she'd say, Daddy, that's not right. That's not how we learned it. So I had to relearn their approach to math. And when I relearned it, because I'm a nerd, I was like, oh my God, this is so much better because you're learning fundamental relations between analytical concepts, not just simply memorizing. And I think that's actually going to happen with the spoken word. It's going to be less about where does the verb go. It's going to be more about how can I leverage this to make the way of learning, reinventing the academic enterprise for an AI future. I'm giving a talk on that on Thursday, by the way, what's all top of mind. All right, going back to infrastructure. Now, we've talked about compute power a couple of times. That word has come up a couple of times. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the infrastructure required to enable this future. And infrastructure broadly defined. We just touched a bit on workforce, which is how do we educate the next generation. We can touch more on that. I'd love to hear how you're retraining your workforces for this AI-driven future. And I'd also like to talk about infrastructure broadly defined. Energy, for example. When we say compute power, we're also talking about actual power. In the state of Connecticut, throughout the U.S., we've been in a period where demand has actually been flattened down because we're bringing in all these more efficient energy technologies. But now it's expected to spike again, right? Demand for energy is expected to spike, already likely is, because of all of the compute power required for these new, for this future. So I'm just curious what each of your companies is doing to prepare.
I guess I'll start. We're doing a variety of things to prepare our infrastructure. We deal with a lot of data, but also a lot of data of different sensitivity levels. So we're using government approved clouds for data processing, AI processing, but we're also using on-premises hardware. We've worked out a deal with Dell and procured what they're calling a modular data center. It's like the size of a tractor trailer, and it allows us to process AI on premises, disconnected from the world, if you will, using large language models that we import. So we're using that to do our most sensitive data processing. So there's that measure of infrastructure. I think, we're seeing the impact of AI and AI processing starting to impact what our customer wants in our products, right? They want more processing power on board our ships, and we have to accommodate that with our power distribution systems. I've seen charts that show the amount of power consumption in the United States growing almost exponentially over the next 20 years because of data centers and desalinization. So, we're preparing ourselves with both on-premises hardware and then working with the cloud.
By the way, quick aside on electric boat. I had a chance to take a ride on a nuclear submarine, which, by the way, is a cool perk of this job. And when we docked, we came off, and the commanding officer said to me, "Good to meet you, sir. I have to go power down a nuclear reactor." And I said, "How about you leave it running and just plug it into the grid? We could use the megawatts." And she goes, "Sir, it doesn't work that way." But my actually follow-up question is, and if you can't answer it, by the way, the one thing they wouldn't let me see when I toured electric boat was a nuclear reactor, so I know these things are sensitive, so you might not be able to answer this question. But do you have to add power to a sub to power these technologies, or is there excess power on the average sub? If you can't answer, no worries. He's thinking too much, so I won't force the question.
Rather
Don't worry. Don't worry.
I can just...
I got, at least I qualified it, right? Didn't force the answer. Please.
Yeah, I can just say briefly, I think what we're seeing in aircraft and all sorts of vehicles is much more demand for power on board, right? We see that in our business, and I'm sure everybody else does too. So that is one of the challenges that we have to work with. We're also using government cloud providers and our own data centers as well. I'll say, and I'm not speaking for my company here, but I'll say I think we're kind of in a pinch point when it comes to energy consumption and data centers. I'm not sure anybody believes that the apocalyptic predictions of data center building are really going to come true. I think market forces are going to take over, and that gravity is going to take over sooner or later. But it's still at the moment it is definitely a key consideration, both in the products to make sure that we're ready, and also just in the compute necessary to build the products.
By the way, just on data centers, we don't have any megascalers in the state of Connecticut. We have some corporate compute clusters, but no megascaler data centers. But they are calling on us, which means if they're calling on anyone in New England where our power is almost 100% higher than the rest of the United States, the price is 100% higher than the rest of the United States, they're running out of options. So they're really, the build here is pretty incredible. Please.
So I'm fully aligned with both Gary and Pete said, but I'll take it to two different applications, right, where we're doing this. So on the undersea side, one of the things we know is that there's a large amount of data we have to process at major data centers. So we know that it's about right place, right location, right processing power to figure out the right solution. So while we're doing that at major hubs, we also know that what we're going to put on a submarine, there's not as much room. Well, I won't get to the power side because that was sensitive, but we can't put that many GPUs to be able to process data real time. So we've worked on different solutions to be able to do what they need to do on a submarine versus what they need to be able to do back at a data center. And then getting back to since we talked about risk earlier, we have a new initiative with a venture called EmberPoint, which is about firefighting intelligence. And so in those cases, we're taking data from space, from other sensors, and we're trying to predict what could become fuel for a fire, what areas could ignite for wildfires. And that is data that could be done at a larger data center. That's where we need to know. But we need to provide that information to folks at the edge who are trying to fight the fire to proactively get ahead of it. Those folks won't have the same compute. They need to rely on what's done back at the edge, but also have the ability through smaller processing infrastructure at their fingertips to make more informed decisions and react and positioning the right responses to put out the fires and just treat it in advance. So we're trying to look at where things need to be centralized and where things need to be distributed in solving that problem.
Yeah, and if I can add to that, you talk about infrastructure broadly defined. And I think it's really important to sort of the way I would frame it is infrastructure is not just data centers. It is, if autonomy is simply a computer assisting or taking the place of a human in certain tasks, we have to think about the legal environment, the contracts, how do we get the people from A to B? How do we get the information from A to B in an autonomous vehicle? Is all of that mapping data and software resident in the vehicle, or does it have to be connected via some sort of wireless? And what happens if that connectivity is lost? And so infrastructure broadly defined has to be broadly defined for us to think about how to really sort of harness its power.
Let me just one quick follow-up for you, and then I'll pass the mic. I want to push you a little bit, though, on workforce. One of the assets Connecticut has is the highest per capita penetration rate of actuaries, and I think on the planet. Per capita makes it a little easier. We're a small state. But actuarial math, one could argue, is already the domain of AI. It's probabilistic math. And if there's any actuaries in the room, I apologize for saying that. But my question for you is, how is the Hartford thinking about retraining its workforce to leverage these tools?
Yeah, we actually, as we think about leveraging AI, it is not just an IT problem. It's not an IT project. You need domain experts sitting alongside the folks that are expert in the AI and working together to develop the tool so it's useful to the human being. Yep. And that, I think, so for us, how do we position it so the employee has confidence in the tools that they are being given to do those things that will augment their job, and when they make decisions, that those decisions they can feel good are again, speed, ease, and accuracy, but accuracy is critical because nobody wants to go out and make a bad decision.
But let me push on that a little further, and I'll open this up to the group too. Take this to its logical conclusion. So right now, AI is sitting alongside a human, with a human interpreting more results than perhaps the human could on their own. But taking it out to its logical conclusion, wouldn't AI theoretically get better and better and better over time, such that ultimately the human perhaps isn't as necessary as he or she once was?
I certainly in our business, I don't think you can ever eliminate the human being, because when something goes wrong, there are counterparties to that, and someone has to manage the interaction of the plaintiff and the defendant, and our goal is to take care of our customers, and that requires empathy and communication skills, and I heard somebody joke at one point that with the rise of autonomous and AI, the humanities are back, because we still have to communicate with each other. And so in an environment where we will always have a human making those decisions, augmented by technology, we have to make sure that they are able to articulate what you can give them a bunch of really cool stuff, but could I come to you and describe it and make you feel confident that it works, and so we can do business together?
So I think that this discussion gets into, in my mind, sort of the ethical and moral decisions we have to make as a community, right? And so and it ties back to infrastructure in my mind too, because one of the things that organizations need from an infrastructure perspective is a governance approach for the use of AI, right? And my company, we've established a policy and procedure for how we're going to work AI and how we require humans in the loop. We require humans to ultimately make decisions right now. And we also have to monitor what the government is going to do about AI, right? What kind of regulations, what kind of controls are going to be put in place, and we have to stay aligned with those. So the infrastructure has to not just be like, how do I process AI, but how do I think about AI as a company and as a user, and how do I monitor AI ethics out in the world?
This brings up a really interesting question, which is managing the tension between inspiring and enabling innovation and risk-taking, entrepreneurship, and protecting the populace, regulation. And we've also got this interesting dynamic where there's states doing it individually. Colorado and California, and now Connecticut and others have put some protections in place. And the federal government, which so far is pushing for, because of geopolitical competitive tension, pushing for a more hands-off approach. Do you think we're getting it right? And by the way, I think you always get these things wrong, right? Because managing that balance is challenging, but at least in terms of where you see it right now, the balance between enabling innovation and protecting our populist regulation, do you think we're getting it right? It's a big question.
I was going to say, I think you just asked a bunch of technical guys a political question.
I'm the political guy.
I could speak for my company, right? And I think maybe that's the best way to go. We like he was just saying, we're really focused right now on responsible use of AI and responsible use of AI policy. It's baked into everything we do. And to the comment that we had previously about how we use AI, I mean, at the end of the day, we're in the business of connecting people, right? We make jet engines and people fly all over the world. That's what we do it for. So I think we're driven by that kind of innovation and that service of the customer. And then we put this framework around it in order to, we obviously, at our company, safety is absolutely non-negotiable, right? That's not a slogan. That's something we live every day. And so any new tool, whether it be computer simulation or go back, pick anything you want in history, has had to have a framework around it as far as how do we validate the answers that we get out of this? How do we use this in a way that gets us to that goal of a safe product? And so I don't think this changes anything related to our safety management system or our quality management system. At least it doesn't override any of that, right? It becomes something that we have to manage within that framework.
I think one of the things that jumps right out at me is we specifically decided we are not going to use AI to make hiring decisions because we don't know what kind of, if it could introduce biases into our hiring decisions that we don't want. We want merit-based hiring, and you can't know for sure, right, if AI is using some other basis.
So I was going to say, I think it's moving so fast. I think we're doing it as right as we can at the moment, right? Everything is different every day. You talk about frontier models; they're different every 2 weeks to 3 months right now, right? So, safety is key. We have corporate policy as well for our governance and rules of ethical use of AI and safety and reliability of use of AI, and that's core to how we build. I mean, when you're talking about flight autonomy software, when you're talking about integrated air missile defense systems, those have to have certification and safety as key number one, right? So I think the approaches we're trying to take, we talked earlier about intelligent fast failure, which has been one of my favorite terms for a quarter of a century. And I think where we're trying to learn quickly, we're doing that in the safe spots. We're not throwing that at a missile defense problem right now. We're throwing that at the things that we think we can learn and get just, there's always more work to do. There's no shortage of work, and I think in any of our industries that could keep us going faster, which is why it's making the ability for not, eventual replacement of humans, but for our humans to be able to do more work, right? They can accomplish a lot more because our backlogs just require a lot more attention. And so learning where we can apply it, putting it in the right spots safely. And honestly, I break it down. We talked earlier about this a little bit. I view it as mission applied AI and then developmental AI, where we're doing agentic engineering in how we work versus where we put it in our customer solutions, right? And I think the safety side of where we put in our customer solutions is key because that's where we want to do it in a way that makes sense. Like, hey, we've deployed the Matrix autonomy software now. It's not driven by AI as much, but that is something that we're doing for flight safety. It is reducing the chance of pilot error, right? And then you get into the other side of how we're going to do it with agentic development. Well, that's where let's try developing, how much code can we write? How can we vericode the answer, right? So how are we doing this in a way that makes sense for those outcomes that aren't going to be in a safety certified system yet, right? So we learn incrementally, we fail fast, we get faster, and we adapt as quickly as we can with the frontier models.
Yeah, and I'm gonna defend my actuary friends. They're not just doing math, and this gets to the point. Everything we should always be approaching it from what is the problem I'm trying to solve, and so from when we're doing loss modeling, actuaries have to be taking historical data and thinking about its future application in the environment you're heading into, which is no different than everything we're talking about here. Is what am I trying to do? And then how do I apply these tools to the problem? And as long as we stay focused on that, overgeneralized views of governance and things like that, you can sort of apply it as you go, I think, while trying to avoid political questions.
Yeah. I'm going to ask another question, but I also want the audience to know we're going to open it up to audience questions after this. So if folks have questions, please get them ready now and speak up. I'll repeat the question so everyone can hear it. You mentioned kind of the future. I wanted to look at a geopolitical lens without the political side of geopolitical. When you think about your company's strategies, your longer term, looking out to the future strategies, and when you think about where in the country, where in the world these innovations are happening, I'm curious how you think about that strategy, where you're putting assets and why you think certain areas of investment are logical and make sense. Just kind of give us a sense for what the future is likely to look like.
Are you talking about geographical investment or just investment in general to compete across the world?
Investment in general. I was making a joke about geopolitical.
Yeah,
but,
okay.
But
all right.
I think investment in general, where you're investing your company's resources to enable this future we've all just described.
Yeah. I mean, the simple answer is all over the place, right? Everywhere. But I'll explain why. One of our SVPs of engineering some years ago said a jet engine is a marvel of modern technology, but they're sold like Big Macs. And that might have been a little bit of an overstatement, but the fact is we're in a very competitive world. Everybody on this stage is in a very competitive world. And so when a disruptor like this appears, we have to very quickly figure out, okay, how can we use this for value? How can we use this to continue to compete in the global marketplace? Because there are lots of other companies out there who are interested in eating our lunch. So I think it's really important for us to be smart about it. Now, here's the challenge, right? Whenever a disruptor appears, you've got to deal with three things, right? You've got to deal with fear, hype, and opportunity. Let's take fear for a moment. So whenever something new comes along, computer modeling was like this, there will be people within your company who fear that. They're afraid that that's going to take away their job or whatever. But you need those folks because they've got years and years of experience that you have to leverage. And so they're really important to bringing it to the next level, and these new technologies can actually help them to bring their work to the next level. Hype, well, we're really there right now with AI, right? And it seems like there are all these companies that are little more than 10 guys in a .ai URL showing up saying, hey, I read your annual report and I can solve all your problems. And so we have to be really smart as companies, thinking about how do we do smart POCs, proofs of concept, right? How do we allow for failure, right? If we're doing it right, not all these proofs of concepts are going to be successful. And so we have to allow for that and reward that internally. And then finally, opportunity. We've really got to look at what are the business opportunities that we've got? What are the high value places where we can go after? And so I think when we think about competing in the world, navigating that landscape is really the key right now at a high level.
So if I look back 6 years ago, we stood up the LM Artificial Intelligence Center, otherwise known as the Lake, right? Because we viewed the need at that point in time to have a centralized core to provide Lockheed Martin with AI infrastructure, what we called AI Factory in a box, and then personnel who were completely well-trained from educational and background in AI, right? So that we couldn't train everybody. Not every engineer is going to become an AI engineer. So we established that, and then we essentially permeated across the business so that everyone could leverage the Lake. And the Lake then provided us the ability to address the mission engineering element we talked about earlier. I mean, that was when we look back on how we're doing business differently and how we're trying to provide better solutions. One of the first things we talked about publicly doing was we updated our Aegis ships to be able to see more than a missile, right? That was the big thing. We trained those forever just to look at, use those radars to look for missiles coming at the ships to defend themselves. And then suddenly they had to go against drones. Well, we taught it to not look for anything small for a long time. But we're able to do that with AI back at the hub and then provide that over-the-air updates so the ships could suddenly see that overnight, right? That was all driven by AI processing. Now we're trying to move that to the ship so they can learn in real time, right? So I'll say it's transforming strategically how we approach leveraging our core lake, product that's working with our teams that know, we took radar engineers, we partnered with the lake, and we provided that solution. I'd say, we then created Astros AI, which is a commercial entity to help provide AI infrastructure for folks who were in need of it, leveraging what we do at the lake. So I'd say it was very focused for a long time on that side, and now we're also trying, and that doesn't stop, that's going to continue full speed ahead, but we're also focused on transforming how we're going to leverage more agents in our workforce every day right now. That's going to be key just to be more productive. So I think those are really transforming how we work every day.
By the way, in case anybody missed that, LAKE is the Lockheed AI Center, which is one of the cooler acronyms on the planet. Please, Ian.
Yeah, and as I think about this, one of the things I've enjoyed about interacting with the folks up on stage here is, as we're thinking about investment, we are doing it recognizing the competitive environment and also doing it consistent with our company's values. And so the idea that if an insurance company or a missile manufacturer or a submarine manufacturer, you have to compete, but then you have to use the technology to build the future that will be longstanding and that you can be proud of. And so our investment decisions are in part very sort of, I say old-fashioned, but the traditional investment metrics. But we also have to be sensitive to, are we doing this in a way that, again, we would be proud of and produces the results that our stakeholders want?
Yep. Makes sense.
Yeah, I think what underpins competition in general is really across the board is affordability, right? And our customer is the government, and even the government doesn't have infinite amounts of money, right? So we have to use every tool at our disposal, including AI, to operate as efficiently as we possibly can to deliver the products we need, but also maintaining the quality standards that we absolutely demand, right? We cannot ever lose a submarine. And so that's where kind of the human in the loop comes in our mind. And it also comes in where we sort of overcome that fear, because when AI first started becoming a thing, right, a very visible thing, there was that fear that Pete talked about. Everybody was, oh my God, what's this going to do to our business? What's this going to do to our product? But now we've come to the realization over a little bit of time that, hey, we have to learn how to take advantage of this technology if we want to be efficient, effective, and maintain the quality we need to have and remain competitive.
Great. So now we've got about 10 minutes left. Are there any questions from the audience? Whoa, okay. I don't know if we have mics. It doesn't look like we do. So I'm just going to ask that you say it loud enough that I can hear it, and I'll repeat the question. Let's start with this gentleman here on the left. Yes.
I just want to get a little understanding of your journey for AI. In other words, do you have an AI leader? Do you have an AI team? Are you building everything in-house and you're hiring a bunch of people? Are you using models? You're going out to vendors to do this? I mean, it's a big shift, right? And there's a whole bunch of upskilling people and so forth. So I just wanted to get a better understanding of how your companies are going about this journey.
And I'm going to ask just one person to take the question, just so we can get some others in. So the question is, AI journey, how have you adjusted your resources because of it?
I mean, I can certainly say from our perspective, the answer is yes. You need internal, you need external. Again, the comment I made earlier about we're being very deliberate about it, and the idea of having an individual who helps coordinate the collaboration that's necessary, having domain experts alongside, so you're making good, thoughtful decisions. But I'm not entirely sure there's one way to do it, other than you should be very thoughtful, have a plan, and then sort of follow that, measure it, manage it.
Yeah, I would actually add to that by saying there shouldn't be one way to do it. So we really have to think about the fact that AI and digital are going to be everywhere. So we are growing our AI capability. We do have AI organizations, but we're also recognizing, as Ian mentioned earlier, that you need AI people who are working with domain experts. You need domain experts who are also AI people. And so we're really the way we see it is really bringing up the skills of the business at every level, right? From the really hardcore AI nerds to the folks who are going to be in contact with AI, to the executive level who are going to be making decisions about AI, and all of that is really critical. And years ago, I was very involved in high performance computing, supercomputing. We used to talk about high performance computing culture. We really need to build that same kind of digital culture, AI culture within, so it's not a slogan, but it's just baked into the company, and people understand how to use it effectively.
Frank used the phrase intelligent fast failure, which I love, by the way, this concept of like iterative. So I think the journey always changes along the journey. Let's go here in the back. Yep.
I really appreciated what you have said about culture and vision and how you approach. Oh, look at that. I'm lucky. I'm really curious to hear maybe an example of the gentleman from Pratt & Whitney mentioned having room for failure, especially when you're experimenting with something so new. Could I have maybe some examples of failures and how you moved through that from at least one or two of you?
I can start. So, I can't get into a lot of detail, but we've certainly had some partnerships that we've looked at. I think the hazard, let me just explain what I mean by making room for failure. The hazard is that you have a new technology and a lot of people feel incentivized to demonstrate that they're using it and to succeed. And you don't want to create an environment as a leader where it's going to be a success. You need to create an environment where it might not work and you'll still be rewarded for that if that's the case. And we did have a situation where we partnered with a company. It looked very promising. We did a lot of work with them, and we did an evaluation at the end, and we said, you know what? This isn't really working. It's not delivering value at a higher level. And here's why, and here's what we've learned from it. And that person, the person who led that independent study was rewarded for that and just did a phenomenal job, really. And so that's what I mean is not all of it's going to work. You need to be smart about what you pick, but you also, as a leader, need to make sure that you're not incentivizing everything to be a success.
Yeah, and since we talked about culture, we have a lot of folks that want to do the right thing all the time, right? So to create the space for them to try something new is really pivotal, and leaders have to do that, right? So I'll give you an example of one of the areas we're trying to do that. So with so many frontier models, and everyone wants access to the frontier model to do refactoring and everything else they want to do in software development, some of our legacy monolithic applications we built over decades, they're just enormous. You can't necessarily load them in to start refactoring all that very quickly with the frontier models. So, we're letting folks try and do that where it makes sense, but we're also letting folks try, with some sub-agents where they could do some smaller things and see where that makes sense. And we're capturing that at a broader level. So when someone's trying something, they're not just the only one learning it. They're publishing it, and folks are seeing, oh, here's where we're making it so the entire engineering team in our line of business can see firsthand, oh, someone tried that with that model. That didn't work. That was their input. Let me try something different. Or, hey, it's been 3 weeks. Something new has been published. Let me try this again, right? So that's where we're trying to create the culture of like not spending hours doing it, but I took a few minutes. I threw this off to an agent. Did it work or not? What did I learn?
That's one of the great opportunities of AI in my mind, is allowing people to fail quickly and recover quickly and move on, right? Because if you're trying to design a structure, for example, you build a finite element model, it might take you weeks to mesh a complex structure. AI can help you do that meshing quickly and or go through multiple iterations of your structure before you build that complex model and help you home in on the right answer and filter out some of the bad answers. So your ideas can fail quickly and recover quickly.
Yeah, and if I can just have one quick word, it's not just about failure, obviously. It's also about giving people the space to innovate. A lot of new ideas coming from a lot of different quarters, and so we have to do that too.
And just quickly to add to that, the reason, for me, some of this is not necessarily that new a thing. Getting groups of people to try new things together, collaborating, not being afraid to try something based on the fear that my peers will perceive me as having failed. Because if I try it and it works, they learn about it, they know about it. And if I try it and it doesn't work, they know about it and they learn about it. And so in this environment, collaboration is going to be really important.
I think what you're describing presents an interesting challenge for business leadership. And what I mean by this is you're all technical people, so you're used to an environment of experimentation, iteration, fast failure. Those that are nerds grew up in that kind of environment. But for established business leaders who built up their judgment from years of experience, they have a concept, and this is natural, of this concept of judgment. And judgment is, don't bother trying that because I've tried it before and it didn't work. It's a waste of time. And so for business leaders to now accept the fact that the marginal cost of expertise is zero, and hiring people and allowing them to fast fail, as opposed to, no, don't bother trying, I've seen that before. That's going to be a real challenge, I think, for folks that didn't grow up in an AI environment.
And that'll help them learn the judgment that those executives are looking for.
Agreed. Other questions? Please, right here. Actually, you know what? Right here. The center seems to have all the questions right now. So left and right, I expect you guys to bring up the rear. Please.
Thank you for the opportunity. So my question is related to compute cost. I think a couple of companies recently, they said they run out of their compute cost for the annual budget. And how is the cost in your companies? I think it might be good if you can comment on the number of tokens and the cost they are incurring.
So the cost of tokens. This is a question that comes up a lot, which is, how do we manage this as an incremental spend not many of us were expecting or budgeting for just a few years ago?
I don't think I can speak to the amount of tokens Lockheed's using or the cost. I'm not even privy to that amount of information. But I'll say we are trying to create, through that centralized way we're giving access to the models, we're giving tiers of model availability to folks. And we're also trying to get to the point of they don't have to use the highest degree model for every single thing they're trying to use. So we're trying to navigate a way to manage efficient token usage, right place, and there's places where we're investing internally in infrastructure, and then we're also going to be leveraging cloud and enterprise resources from partners in industry that we need to use where we're paying for that kind of service. So it's a mix. There's no one-size-fits-all solution, but obviously not everyone's ready to use all the tokens all the time either right now. That's probably a problem, a year or two from now we're going to have to figure out a different
Let me
solution.
jump in because I want to get one more question in, but just show of hands, is anyone giving unlimited token usage? I assume you're all limiting the amount of token usage teams can use.
I'd say it's not spoken about, but if someone needed to go beyond the realm, I think we'd allow the occasional. Not everyone has unlimited token use.
Interesting. All right, we have time for one more question. Come on, left and right. Nothing. Okay, please.
Oh, okay, no. I was just saying.
Kathy, we need the mic over here.
You've all spoken about how you integrate AI opportunities, learning, fast, intelligent failure. Thank you. With domain expertise. I'd love to hear from a couple of you about where in the org chart you're looking to pair people. It's probably not only at the senior 20, 30 years experience level, and it's probably not at the other end of the range.
No, I would say it's everywhere. We need everybody, all of our technologists, all of our engineers, and using AI, and we want to pair. We have engineers that don't understand, don't trust, don't want to use AI, right? We're going to pair them up with people that have learned how to use it effectively and kind of bring them along and teach them